Healthy. My name is Yuka Mayarati. In such an honor for me to speak on behalf of the organizer, let me give you a warm welcome to the second webinar. It's about sponsorship and immigration rule in the Netherlands. Terima kasih ya buat semuanya yang sudah datang. Kali ini webinar ini sangat penting buat kita semua, yaitu tentang sponsorship dan peraturan imigrasi di Belanda. Karena banyak sekali peristiwa kejadian di mana kita mengalami sesuatu yang kurang menyenangkan.
Dia kita bayar.
Dan kita kadang-kadang suka nggak tahu kita harus bagaimana dan kemana, dan mungkin ada teman kita juga yang kita juga perlu informasikan tentang peristiwa-peristiwa yang kurang enak yang terjadi di negara Belanda ini. I would like to welcome Bapak Mayervas as the Indonesian ambassador who just came in Netherlands but immediately gave encouragement for all of us. Selamat malam Pak, sudah hadir di sini dan mensupport kami semua. I would like to say thank you for join us to our speaker today, Mr. Groen and Mr. Kleiweg. Goedenavond. And before we got started, I would like to express my appreciation to Bapak Winardi Hanafuluki from Indonesia Embassy in Den Haag, Yasmin Soraya, dia nantinya yang akan menjaga gawang di chat room, Ebek Litai juga sebagai moderator. Dan juga Imelda Yunawarela dari Indonesian Living Holland yang semangat, sabar untuk pendaftaran peserta dan mengirimkan kode, password, dan Kang Denny yang malam ini membantu sebagai operator Zoom. We couldn't have done without them. Oke, kita nggak lama-lama, saya menyerahkan kepada Bapak Mayervas terlebih dahulu untuk menyampaikan sepatah dua patah kata kepada kami semua. Silahkan Bapak.
Oke, selamat malam. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening to everybody. Bapak, Ibu, sebelum selamat berjumpa lagi kita pada kesempatan ini. Tapi sebelumnya saya ingin pertama memperkenalkan salah satu pendatang baru di KBRI Den Haag yang mungkin nanti akan sangat banyak berhubungan dengan beliau, yaitu Bapak Ronald sebagai atase imigrasi yang baru, sangat baru karena baru mulai bertugas kemarin menggantikan Bapak Fani yang segera akan kembali ke Indonesia. Mana Pak Ronaldnya? Ada kelihatan? Mana Pak Ronald? Biar kenal ya, pasti banyak urusan nanti kan ya dengan Pak Ronald ya. Ini. Mana Pak Ronald? Ini Pak Ronald. Orangnya masih muda, masih selalu senyum. Mudah-mudahan nanti Pak Ronald bisa membuat segala sesuatunya lebih baik bagi kita semua. Selamat datang juga atas nama kami semua Pak Ronald di Belanda, dan nanti mungkin setelah ini kita bisa lebih berkenalan lebih lanjut dengan Pak Ronald sebagai atase imigrasi yang baru. In this occasion, I would also like to thanks again for the panelists. Yeah, Mr. Groen. Good evening, Mr. Kleiweg. We meet again tonight, and thank you on behalf of Embassy Indonesia in The Hague. I would like to thank you and express our appreciation for your assistance and for enlargement you provide to us about the sponsorship and mixed marriage in Indonesia. Mixed marriage of Indonesian here. Bapak, Ibu semua, Pak Ebet juga selamat malam Pak. Pak Ebet sebagai moderator nanti ya. Ya, mudah-mudahan udah lancar ya Pak Ebet ya, itunya ya, perlengkapannya Pak Ebet. Ini adalah webinar kedua yang kita lakukan. Nah, terima kasih kepada Ibu Yuke yang sangat aktif membantu sehingga acara ini dapat terselenggara. Ini acara yang kedua karena banyak permintaan dari apa yang kita lakukan pertama tadi. Yang dulu mungkin nggak banyak yang bisa ikut, ada beberapa yang nggak bisa ikut, dan kita adakan lagi seri kedua ini. Kalau nanti dipandang perlu lagi, kita adakan seri berikutnya. Ada yang ketiga, mungkin kalau memang masih diperlukan lagi, kita lakukan lagi. Kalau memang itu memang diperlukan oleh kita semua di sini. Selamat datang di acara ini. Mudah-mudahan semua kita sehat. Kalau ada hal-hal yang mengganggu, kita bisa mengganggu kesehatan maksudnya, apalagi karena COVID, mungkin kita bisa juga saling memberitahu. Dan karena ini mungkin pertemuan baru pertama ya kita di 2021, ya harapan kita semua tentunya agar kehidupan kita semua di tahun 2021 ini akan lebih baik daripada tahun-tahun sebelumnya, dan yang lebih penting lagi COVID ini segera pergi dan kita bisa hidup normal lagi seperti kehidupan yang kita inginkan, atau ya seperti normal kehidupan yang ingin kita jalani. Ada yang tidak dengar ya? Ada ya? Tapi saya nggak ingin panjang lebar. Mudah-mudahan tentu acara ini sangat bermanfaat, dan harapan kami juga agar acara ini benar-benar dapat dimanfaatkan oleh para partisipan atau oleh kita semua yang merasa bahwa ini sangat terkait dengan kehidupan kita di sini, sangat terkait dengan kepentingan kita di sini, warga negara Indonesia di sini. Kalau ada hal-hal yang ingin lebih diperjelas, silahkan ditanya. Mungkin juga nanti kita bisa mengadakan diskusi. Nanti pada seri lain kita di antara kita diskusi untuk mengetahui apa sih isu atau masalah atau yang menjadi perhatian kita atau yang jadi pengalaman kita yang mungkin ini perlu kita share ke pihak lain atau ke orang lain. Jadi ngobrol di antara kita gitu, dan sharing pengalaman atau juga menyampaikan hal yang menurut kita perlu pemecahan bersama atau juga keterlibatan pihak lain. Jadi sekali lagi selamat datang di acara ini. Semoga harapan agar acara ini dapat benar-benar berguna bagi kita semua dapat tercapai. Once again, thank you very much for Mr. Grun and Mr. Kleiweg. I'm sorry because as a newcomer here, I still learning Dutch. Pak Ebet juga terima kasih, dan sekali lagi Ibu Yuke terima kasih untuk segala hal yang telah dilakukan untuk terselenggaranya acara ini. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Terima kasih Pak Dubes Harfas untuk kata sambutan hari ini. Terima kasih untuk oleh-oleh cita-cita yang bisa di-share sama kita semua. Dan saya juga berterima kasih dengan teman-teman KBRI dan juga terutama selamat datang untuk Pak Ronald sebagai advisi imigrasi yang baru. Malam ini kami tindak lanjut dari pembicaraan sebelumnya mengenai masalah-masalah imigrasi dan yang lain-lain. Dan karena itu kami undang dua teman atau sahabat kami, yaitu Mr. Groen dan juga Mr. Kleiweg. Dan mereka malam ini bicarakan dua-dua 15 menit dan setelah itu ada kesempatan untuk Q&A, question dan answers. Kalau Mr. Groen terkenal sekali dengan salah satu kasus di Belanda, itu namanya Chinese cooks. Waktu itu ada masalah di Belanda, orang-orang Cina, koki-koki Cina tidak boleh masak di Belanda. Tapi dengan pengalaman Mr. Kleiweg, koki-koki Cina boleh tetap masak di Belanda, di restoran-restoran Cina. Karena ilmu-ilmu koki di Belanda itu biasanya ilmu-ilmu koki Prancis. Dan ini juga namanya the Wok Agreement. Dan itu mungkin masuknya bagus untuk mulai dengan Mr. Kleiweg. So first of all, thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador Marifas, for your welcoming remarks. We really appreciate this, and we are most delighted that you can attend this meeting. Also, special welcome for Bapa Roland as our new immigration attaché. So I was telling that Mr. Kleiweg is really famous for the so-called Wok Agreement. This was the case of Chinese cooks in the Netherlands who were not allowed to have a working permit in the Netherlands. So by saying this, I actually want to introduce Mr. Kleiweg. So the floor is yours. You have about 15 minutes, Mr. Kleiweg. Thank you.
Yes, now it's working. Thank you very much. Nice that I can be with you this evening. First of all, I must say that this is too much honor, the Wok Agreement for me. It was an effort from the Vereniging Chinese Horeca-ondernemers, and they did a brilliant work. And I stood alongside, I looked on a little bit. It was very nice. About tonight, the matters, the immigration issues for the people from Indonesia and basically all over the world. I would like to start with the conclusion that it is important that everybody understands that you have rights. Usually that are human rights, because we're all human. And the fact that you are in the Netherlands or in Indonesia, whether you have a permit or not have a permit, is not so important, because first and foremost, you're human. And that gives you rights. So don't tell yourself, I don't have rights because I am not from this country. No, you have rights. And if you have them, you can make them effective also. So don't be passive, be active. Sorry. Now, how about the migration practice in this country? This is tonight about a family reunion mainly, so I will stick to that. And I would like to talk about family reunion step by step in every phase of the situation. And step number one, of course, is that we have people who are in the country in the Netherlands, or who are outside of the country, they are in Indonesia or somewhere else, and they want to get a residence permit in the Netherlands. Depending on the situation, that means often that the person who is irregular migrant in the Netherlands will have to return to Indonesia, but not always. And assume that that happens, then you have to come back to the Netherlands. That is possible. It is advisable to prepare yourself well, because it is not a good plan to leave the Netherlands and then start thinking about how to come back. Getting a permit to come back is possible because family reunion, that depends on family life. Family life is a human right, and as a rule, that must be respected by countries. But it must be done in a manner that does not create an unreasonable burden for the country of the receiving country. So countries can ask all kinds of requirements from the people. First requirement will be that you have a normal, realistic relationship or marriage. It should not be only to get a residence permit, it must be real. Children are, of course, always real, I would say, so that is not an issue. Also, a country can claim from the migrant that the sponsor of the migrant, the husband or wife or parent, that is already a legal resident in the Netherlands, will financially provide for the newcomer. So that is a standard requirement for family reunion. Exceptions are possible if the people, the sponsor in the Netherlands, is not able to provide financially for his family member. But with not able, I mean really not able. Financially, one must be, let's put it this way, if you're physically not able to work or mentally not able, or you are at the retirement age, then it is quite easy to get a waiver of the obligation to provide for your family members. In other situations, if you are on welfare for a long time and you do not have a reasonable chance at the labor market, there are some possibilities also, or if you have to provide care to your family member. However, this is quite difficult and complicated, and we're not going to solve that and discuss this in this 15 minutes, so I will not try. There are people, of course, who are retired. You have an AOW-uitkering if you're 66 years and older. People are sometimes in Wajong, that will say they are unable to work basically from a young age, or they are having a so-called uitkering without any obligation attached to it. Then it is also an option to be not having the money. And other things are, of course, the migrant should not be very criminal. That was not allowed. Those are all quite common sense matters. I think in Indonesia, I don't know, Indonesian migration law, I think it's the same. If I am a very misbehaving man, I will never get the permit in Indonesia, I think. That's wise. Then step number 2, you apply for the permit to come to the Netherlands, and you will be allowed to come to the Netherlands and you'll get your permit here. Then everything is fine, but what then? First and foremost, I would advise people to think ahead and plan ahead. Look at your future, because first thing you have to do is do the inburgeringscursus. Not the nicest thing, not what people would like most, but it is important. Inburgering law changed recently. There's new law about it, so it's better arranged nowadays. But you need an inburgeringsdiploma to get either permanent residence in the Netherlands or obtain the Dutch nationality. That is very important, because if you have a relationship or a marriage and you break up after 5 years, you would be able to get a residence permit, prolongation and independent residence permit, if you have an inburgeringsdiploma. But if you don't have the inburgeringsdiploma, basically it will be rejected, and then you're in trouble. Unless you can prove that you could not pass the exam because of medical reasons or other issues. I know people are now trying to do the exam for about a year, but due to COVID, there are no options. But it is important, please do the inburgering. Then you also know and learn how the country works. That is always an advantage. Then, if there is other problems in the marriage, for instance, if the sponsor loses his job or income because of his own fault, that might be a reason to withdraw the permit. Also, if it is not your fault, you still have to report to the immigration authorities. If you have a permit here, you have the obligation to inform the immigration authorities about every relevant change in your personal situations. So if your relation ends, you must report. If your family income is falling away, you must report. If you don't report, that will be held against you. Not reporting means that you can be fined for that. And also it is enough reason to withdraw the permit if it looks a little bit like not fraud, but not being honest enough. The immigration authorities are quite strict in that. So I would not advise to do so. If you report and it is not your own fault, usually there is not a problem. I would say always report after you contacted somebody with knowledge of this issue. But then we have the third phase. We have a residence permit with partner, and the relationship does not last long enough, not 5 years required as a rule. Then there is a problem, because then you do not meet the requirements for getting a prolongation of your permit or an independent permit as a rule. Then there is maybe a way out if there is matrimonial violence, because some people think they should stay together with their partner, because if there is matrimonial violence and you walk away from your partner, that you lose your permit. That's not true. If you can provide information and some evidence that you are a victim of violence, sexual violence or matrimonial violence, you do aangifte with the police, you report to the doctor and maybe social work or Veilig Thuis or things like that, then you can get prolongation of your permit. But you must substantiate your claim quite well, because the immigration authorities are getting a little bit stricter on this. So be aware of the fact that if you are a victim of matrimonial violence, seek advice. There are much women help groups. We have Veilig Thuis, the police will help you. Nobody will have to stay in a situation of matrimonial violence. That's very important. Other things can be that your partner passes away within 5 years. That is terrible, but the fact that that is happening is enough reason to grant prolongation of the permit. But again, you must report yourself that issue to the immigration authorities, because if you do not report and you wait, then you might end up in a situation of problems. In immigration law, there is one rule: never ever hope that things will pass, problems will solve themselves by just waiting. It doesn't happen in migration law. Either you address problems or they will become bigger.
You have about 5 minutes, Mr. Klein.
Okay, I will speed up a little bit. How about the right of children in this issue? If there are children living with the parent in the Netherlands, they can get quite easily prolonged stay for themselves. If they are minors and they've been living for 1 year with the parent, they can apply for the permit, the independent stay. After that 1 year, are they over 18, they will have to stay with their parent for 5 years, and they have to pass the inburgeringsexamen or have a waiver. It is also the other way around. Maybe if the children have a residence permit or even the Dutch nationality, which is possible, then sometimes the parent can get a permit to stay with the children, also after the breakup, if the relationship or marriage. But for that, it is required, there's a so-called omgangsregeling that is also being effectuated. Mr. Groen will tell more about that. And that is also an option. Always check. Important is also for those without a relationship or with a relationship in the past, those with a Dutch child. If you're an irregular migrant, or if you had been a regular migrant but you lost your permit and you have a Dutch child or a child of a Dutchman that can become a Dutch child, that is often enough reason to get you residential status in the Netherlands if you are the daily caregiver of the child. I think Mr. Groen will also explain about that. Most important is that then is established that the child is offspring of a Dutch father, and that will be established either by acknowledging the child in good faith or with the procedure that establish through a DNA test that the father at least is the father, whether he likes it or not. And if that is the case, then the child will be Dutch. And then you can have a permit with the Dutch child. What, in my last minute, I would say, is advisable for people. Don't believe lawyers. No jokes about lawyers, but you always have to go to the source of information yourself. And in this case, the immigration authorities have a very good website. It's www.ind.nl, also in English, and get your information from there. They're nice. You can also ask them things by chat and things like that. It's working fine. Another option is that you contact the people from the Juridisch Loket at Juridisch Loket for free advice and support. They're nice people. They're skillful. And some of them are specialized in migration law as first-line advisors, and they will know how to help you. They are also working cheap because they're working for free. They're paid by the government, and that is fine. It's good advice. I can really advise it to you. And the website is www.jl.nl, but Ms. Soraya will have that available, no doubt. And the last advice is that if you want to consult a lawyer, that is fine, but you must really consult a lawyer specialized in migration law, because migration law is changing very fast. What is today a certainty is tomorrow different. It is very political thing. So if you have elections now in a couple of months, things can change all the way. It is for me difficult enough to keep up with one field of law, and that is the same for other lawyers. So if you get yourself a lawyer, get a specialized lawyer who at least is a member of the Specialistenvereniging Migratierecht Advocaten. And their website is www.simonvictormarinusanton.nl. And there you find a lot of lawyers all over the country who are specialized in migration law and do that already for many years as a main part of their practice. And at least then they know, then they are up to date. I hope this is helpful. And of course, I'm open to questions. And I hope I stayed within my 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kleiweg, for your words, for your talking about the way to have a resident permit. Also very good. There are already some questions in the chat. Berarti siapa-siapa yang ada pertanyaan mohon ditulis di chat. Nanti akhir pembicaraan speaker kami, 3 jawaban akan dijawab. So again, sorry, Mr. Kleiweg, thank you so much. I'm too familiar.
We know each other.
Also very good to hear that you have a good introspection of yourself. Never believe a lawyer. Bagus Pak Anton atau Pak Mr. Kleiweg menyatakan jangan akan percaya dengan pengacara.
For you, Anton, we know each other.
Yes, I know, as lawyers together. So thank you so much. And I think there will be a lot of questions. This is a topic which affects a lot of us. So yes. I think 1 or 2 more sessions will not be enough. So probably we can help you also with good Indonesian food to ease the pain a little bit. But so again, thank you so much, Mr. Kleiweg. And now I will introduce your confrère, your colleague, Mr. Groen. Mr. Groen is specialized in social security law, especially in family and personal law. And he is also sometimes a teacher at some University for Applied Sciences. An interesting fact, between 2005 and 2017, he was the deputy chair of the Commission of Appeal for Islamic Schools. So sebagai singkatan, sekarang pengacara Mr. Groen. Mr. Groen itu ahli dalam bidang hukum keluarga, dan beliau pernah juga deputy chair dari Komisi banding untuk sekolah-sekolah Islamic di Belanda. So for now, I want to give the floor to Mr. Groen and thanking you very much for your time, Mr. Kleiber. Mr. Groen is not there, or?
Yes, I'm here. Okay. Yes, I had to unmute. Yeah, thank you for your nice words and introduction. Islamic schools and Islamic education in this country is a lot different than family law. But I will tell you something about family law. I'm a family lawyer. I do a lot of divorces, but I do also a lot of marriages. Of course, you cannot marry at my office, but I can try to have your marriage outside, which solemnized outside the Netherlands. I can try to have it recognized in this country. And this is very, very important, because sometimes people think that they are married and they are in fact not married, or the marriage is not recognized in the Netherlands. And talking about Indonesia and the Indonesian system, of course, I'm not an Indonesian lawyer, but talking about the Indonesian system, there are a lot of indigenous groups in Indonesia, and they can marry according to their traditions and according to their regulations. But sometimes people forget that there is also a national law in Indonesian. Mr. Litai, if I'm saying something stupid, you must correct me. But the law in Indonesia states that marriages which are solemnized in certain parts in Indonesia, like Muslim marriages, must be registered. And if they are not registered, then you cannot verify if it's a valid marriage or not. And this registration is very important to have your marriage registered in this country. So you need proof of your marriage. And if you cannot prove that, then the marriage is not acknowledged, but it can also have consequences for the children born out of this marriage. So see to it, if you are still in Indonesia, or you are married in Indonesia, that your paperwork is in order, that you look after your paperwork in the right time limit stated by the law. And I believe that in Indonesia, the law states that if you are married like a Muslim marriage, and you get your buku nikah, that it must be registered officially within a time limit of 60 days. So see to it that this happens. The same goes if children are born. You must report your children, or the birth of your child, to the proper authorities in the right time limit. Otherwise, you can have problems in this country. And of course, I can help you with this if you have problems, but then you need proceedings to do this, and you can avoid proceedings, sometimes costly proceedings, if you have your paperwork in order. So it's important that your marriage in a country outside the Netherlands is legally valid in accordance with the laws of the state where you married. Then another question is, if you are married and your marriage doesn't work out, if you can divorce in this country. And the question is, yes, you can divorce in this country, like in many countries, except the Philippines. It's not a joke. You cannot divorce in the Philippines until this present day. You can only have an annulment in the Philippines. But you can divorce even if you live in Indonesia and your spouse lives in the Netherlands. You can go to the Dutch court and request a divorce. And the grounds for a divorce, or the ground, there is only one ground for a divorce in the Netherlands, is that there is an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. And what does it mean, an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage? It means that your marriage is bad and it won't get good in the future. You don't have to specify this. You don't have to motivate this. Just by stating this will normally get you a divorce. If your spouse, or you live together in this Netherlands, but if your spouse lives in the Netherlands, then the Dutch court will apply Dutch law. So it's not very difficult in normal circumstances to get a divorce in this country, even if you live outside the Netherlands and your spouse lives in this country. When children are born, then it's important that both parents have parental responsibility over the children. If the children live in this country, then the parental responsibility also after a divorce is shared by the parents. And of course, it must be that both parents can efficiently carry out their parental responsibility. So if you live in another country, for instance, Indonesia, you can still look after your child through the parental responsibility, but in some cases it might get difficult when choices must be made, for instance, like changing a school or going to the doctor. Then both parents need to approve that this school has been chosen or this medical treatment has been chosen. If the child lives in another country, then normally speaking, the law of this other country will apply. So even if the child is Dutch, but the child lives in Indonesia, then you have to be in an Indonesian court if you want any arrangement for the child. So it can be that when you request a divorce in the Netherlands, that the Dutch court will apply Dutch law on the divorce request, but maybe applies another law system on another request you make, like any arrangements for the children. The court can also say that they pronounce the divorce, but that you have to be in an Indonesian court for any arrangement of the children. So you must be aware of this, that the applicable law doesn't really connect with the citizenship or the nationality of the child, but more with the place where the child actually lives. Then you can, of course, say, what if the child lives in Indonesia and he comes for a holiday to this country and the father or the mother doesn't bring the child back to Indonesia? What happens in that case? You can say, well, there is some kind of a child abduction. You can state this, but you can also say that if the father keeps the child or the mother keeps the child in this country, that after some time, the habitual residence of this child becomes in this country. And then the Dutch law can make a ruling based on the benefit and the welfare of the child. So the jurisdiction can shift just by acting in a not normal and not proper way. But this will be up to the judge, of course.
5 minutes more, Mr. Groen.
Oh, time really flies when you're having fun, Mr. Litai.
No problem, no problem. Just save you.
What is also important, it's finances or maintenance, like alimony. If you are married and you divorce afterwards, spouses, according to Dutch law, should maintain each other after a divorce. If you live in Indonesia as a woman, for instance, then the Dutch husband or your ex-husband should pay alimony or should maintain in your everyday expenses and your everyday life. And this is what is called your financial needs. But your financial needs is based on the living standard you have in that particular country. So your financial need can be different in Indonesia than in this country. And what he should pay is, of course, based on your need and also based on the income you had together when you lived together, if you live together. The same goes a little bit for child maintenance, for child alimony. This is also based on what the child needs, and what a child needs is also based on the income you both had during the marriage. If the child also lives in Indonesia or in another country, the rules and regulations of this other country will apply. So the Dutch court can make a ruling on alimony and apply like Indonesian law. Of course, when a Dutch judge applies Indonesian law, it will apply this law through Dutch glasses. Dutch judges are not Indonesian judges, so they can only explain Indonesian regulations and law in a limited way through a Dutch view, so to speak. So it can be different. The outcome can be different than an outcome through an Indonesian court. This is more or less a nutshell of marriage, divorce, children, and maintenance. There is a lot more to say on this. And what I would like to stretch that Mr. Kleiweg and me, we work together on a lot of cases for family law and immigration law. We help each other through a lot of cases. And what is also important that you can apply, even if you live in Indonesia, it's possible to apply for subsidized legal aid. And if you apply and it's granted subsidized legal aid, you will have, in normal circumstances, you will not have to pay for your lawyer. So it will be free legal aid. And it doesn't matter if you live outside the Netherlands, as long as a Dutch interest is involved. And a Dutch interest, so to speak, could be divorce proceedings because your husband lives in this country. So there are a lot of possibilities for people outside the Netherlands to get a free lawyer. And like Mr. Kleiweg said, when you retain a lawyer, it must, of course, be a trustworthy lawyer. So I won't say that never believe a lawyer, but be cautious with believing a lawyer. and you can be critical, and a good lawyer will always find the right answer based on the regulations and based on the law in an honest way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groen, for your explanation about family law and so on. So I will give a little bit summary in Indonesian. So forgive me if you cannot understand me. So perhaps someone else can help you in translating. Terutama terima kasih banyak Mr. Groen, pengacara Groen, untuk bahas mengenai hukum keluarga di Belanda. Dan teman-teman, maaf, ini tahun baru. Ini sebenarnya saya sedikit pikun. Tadi saya lupa untuk kasih kesimpulan dari Mr. Kleiweg, tapi saya utamain dulu dari Mr. Groen. Mr. Groen menyatakan bahwa sangat penting kalau menikahnya harus sah, dan sahnya harus sesuai undang-undang dan peraturan setempat. Contoh, kalau bapak-bapak dan ibu-ibu menikah di Jerman, perkawinannya harus sah sesuai hukum Jerman. Kalau di Indonesia ya sah sesuai hukum kita. Dan ini sangat penting untuk buktikan bahwa perkawinan ini sah. Karena banyak konsekuensi. Konsekuensinya juga bisa kalau ada urusan dengan anak-anak, atau dengan lowongan kerja, atau dengan tunjangan-tunjangan negara. Kalau tidak, sering masalah-masalah bisa muncul. Karena itu Mr. Groen menyatakan ini sangat penting. Dan di Belanda beliau juga menyatakan cerainya mudah. Kalau banyak negara bisa cerai gampang sesuai hukum setempat, kecuali beliau menyatakan tidak bisa sesuai hukum Filipina. Hanya bisa tinggal jauh dari satu dengan yang lain. Dan kalau di Belanda, kalau mau cerainya itu lewat pengadilan Belanda. Dan prosesnya tidak terlalu susah menurut Mr. Groen. Hanya harus menyatakan bahwa perkawinan ini sangat sulit. Sulit untuk baik lagi, sulit untuk tindak lanjut. Pokoknya sulit. Dan tidak usah menyatakan kesulitannya di pihak-pihak atau kesulitannya seperti apa. Hanya harus menyatakan sulit dan susah sekali untuk balik. Dan kalau anak-anak juga, kalau masalah-masalah hak orang tua untuk anak sesuai hukum Belanda. Dan ini ada Mr. Groen juga menyatakan hak anak-anak itu sesuai hukum Belanda, tapi juga bisa terjadi anak yang berkewarganegaraan Belanda tinggal di Indonesia, tapi walaupun udah ada ini keputusan pengadilan Belanda bahwa sudah cerai dan dua-dua orang tua disahkan mengenai dapat hak untuk jaga atau lindungi anak, tapi walaupun anaknya berkewarganegaraan Belanda tinggal di Indonesia, tapi kalau ada masalah-masalahnya bisa diurus lewat hukum dan pengadilan di Indonesia. Itu Mr. Groen menyatakan bahwa walaupun satu orang tua, contoh cowok Belandanya tinggal di Belanda, istri dan anaknya tinggal di Indonesia, dan anaknya kewarganegaraan Belanda, tapi kalau ada masalah, hukum Indonesia yang utamakan. Karena menurut mereka hukum Belandanya itu penting untuk lihat situasi dan kondisi anak. Dan itu sangat pas kalau lagi di Indonesia, harus sesuai di Indonesia. Dan walaupun bisa naik pengadilan di Belanda dan anaknya masih di Indonesia, hakim Belandanya buat keputusan sesuai dengan kacamata sesuai dengan peraturan dan regulasi di Indonesia, tapi dengan kacamata Belanda. Dan selain itu, beliau menyatakan juga bahwa kalau ada contoh-contoh juga anak lagi libur di Belanda, tinggal di Belanda, bisa hak yang tadi dibicarakan sesuai hukum Indonesia, kalau pindah ke Belanda, jadinya juga dengan situasi kondisi di Belanda. Yang pentingnya, yang utamakan itu amannya anaknya dan juga kebaikannya untuk anaknya, itu yang diutamain. Dan beliau juga menyatakan sebagai kesimpulan, kalau cari pengacara sangat penting cari pengacara yang sesuai bidangnya. Seperti kalau imigrasi, benar-benar cari pengacara imigrasi. Kalau pengacara untuk kekeluargaannya, benar pengacara untuk kekeluargaannya. Oke teman-teman, itu kesimpulan sepotong dari pembicaraan Mr. Groen. So Mr. Groen, I explained a little bit about what you've said. So hopefully our friends can have a lot of input for their cases. Kalau tadi teman-teman Bapak Kleiweg cerita mengenai aplikasi untuk visa. Yang pentingnya ada orang yang di Belanda yang bisa jadi sponsor. Selain itu juga ada kemauan untuk ke Belanda dan selain itu harus ada income harus sesuai standar Belanda dan biasanya itu tidak terlalu susah dan harus ada kursus inburgering, berarti harus tahu mengenai budaya dan bahasa Belanda dan biasanya tidak sulit. Tapi sekarang Mr. Kleiweg menyatakan hukum imigrasi atau kewarganegaraan atau terkait dengan visa juga sangat sensitif untuk suasana di Belanda politik. Contoh bulan Maret ada pemilihan, undang-undang hukumnya bisa berubah lagi. Dan karena itu kalau apa yang Mr. Kleiweg hari ini menyatakan, setelah pemilihan bisa beda lagi. Karena itu Mr. Kleiweg menyatakan sangat penting untuk selalu diupdate dan juga cari orang yang pas dan tahu mengenai hukum keimigrasian, bukan hanya lawyer atau orang hukum biasa. Nah, itu kesimpulan dari Mr. Kleiweg. Maaf lagi teman-teman, tahun baru saya sedikit lupa-lupa ini. Tapi tadi saya lihat di chat ada banyak pertanyaan menarik dan saya teman-teman pasti harap pertanyaan-pertanyaan dijawab. So Mr. Groen and Mr. Kleiweg, I was telling that there are already a lot of questions in the chat. So the time we have left is about half an hour, and we want to use to answer the questions. So I think Mbak Yasmin, you've selected some questions. Mbak Yasmin udah seleksi beberapa pertanyaan atau mulai dari atas saja ke bawah? Saya lihat masih tidak terlalu banyak pertanyaan. So what do you prefer, Mr. Groen and Mr. Kleiweg? I see there's some questions.
Mr. Ebab?
Yeah, Yasmin?
Yes, I have make some, how do you say, conclusion. Maybe I can address the questions. We have some questions for Mr. Kleiweg. I have already sent via chat room to Mr. Kleiweg. Maybe you can check your message. Okay, to be quick, because we just have like 25 minutes for the questions and answers, because 30 past 8, we have to close the discussion, because we have a curfew hours. Everyone has to be home at 9 o'clock, so we have limited of time. So Mr. Kleiweg, these are the questions. Number one, do the sponsor need to provide monthly bank account balance to prove the ability of the sponsor? And the second one, which position is better, to be Canis migrant, which is not compulsory to learn Dutch before 2024, or is it necessary to take in burgering? Which one is better? And the third questions, Indonesian lady married with a Dutch man for 13 years, and then the husband has a job in Romania, and they travel a lot to Romania and also to Netherlands. And then next June, the residence permit will be finished, but then the husband will be moving also to the Netherlands. And can the lady extend her residence permit, even though she's in Indonesia, for example? But anyway, she's registered in the Netherlands and also pay insurance every month. The fourth questions, 1, 2, 3, 4. Indonesian lady, she's living here less than 2 years, but she hasn't done any inburgering because of the COVID, and she has no work at this moment because it's difficult to find a job at this moment. And if the partner cancel the sponsorship, should she go back, return to Indonesia, or should she look for another partner to continue the sponsorship? Can you give advice on this? The fifth questions, is the NT2 staatexamen diploma is not enough for de onbepaalde tijd verblijfvergunning. And the 6 questions. Yeah, for the child which is already volwassene, yeah, more than 18 years, can the child come to Holland if the mother married with a Dutchman? And the last question for Mr. Kleweg, the person in 2018 married with Dutch man, and then she become a victim of the domestic violence, and she get residence permit based on the child because they have a child. And now the person remarried with another Dutch man. Should she change the purpose of stay for her residence permit? Okay. And for Mr. Groen, I have like 3 questions only, so I make it quick. This lady, she's 62 years old, and she's married with the Dutchman, 64 years old. And she has done inburgering A1, and she wants to bring her grandchild to study here because she take care of this grandchild since baby. Is that possible for her to bring the grandchild to the Netherlands? And the next one is the Indonesian lady is pregnant in another country, yeah, in Indonesia, for example, and wants to giving birth in Netherlands, but she cannot get MVV because the husband, the Dutchman, has no job contract yet. And then he wants to bring the mother before the baby born. Is that possible? Or if the baby born and baby get the Dutch passport, and then he can ask the mother and the baby to come to Holland based on the SAVES visa. And the last questions for Mr. Groen. Okay, the Indonesian lady living in the Netherlands with the partner, and then she has residence permit, but she lived here less than 3 years, and she wants to go back to Indonesia only for holiday because she has children in Indonesia. But she's afraid to go back to Indonesia even for the holiday because her relationship with the Dutch man is ups and down. So she's afraid that the Dutch man will cancel the sponsorship while she's in Indonesia. Do you have advice on this? Thank you, Bung Ebet. I give you the floor again. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin, for your short introduction about the questions. So I think we will start with the heavy one. To Mr. Kleinweg, I think you have 6 or 7 questions, so hopefully it's possible to answer them, and then there's still some time for Mr. Groen to answer the 3 other questions. So I give the floor to Mr. Kleinweg. A lot of success.
Thank you, Mr. Litai. Thank you. First of all, let me make a promise. All those questions I cannot answer in time, so maybe you can send the questions to me. I will answer the questions by email, and then all questions will be answered anyway. Then starting with, well, the questions as far as I can see. The Indonesian woman staying less than 2 years, haven't done inburgering because of COVID, and has no work, and if the partner stops sponsorship, what should she do? Well, if the partner stops the sponsorship, then she will get a letter from the immigration authorities telling her that her permit will be revoked. Maybe we can do some procedure against it. I don't know the situation of the lady herself, but she will not get a residence permit, I think. Maybe there's matrimonial violence. Then the question is whether she should get herself another partner. Well, I'm not specialized in matters of the heart, but I would say only if it is a nice one. Because husbands and partners, that's nice, but only if you have a nice one. If her permit ends, from the date that her permit ends, she still has 2 years' time to apply for a new permit while staying in the Netherlands without having to go back to Indonesia. That is what I could say. Then the question is een NT2 staatsexamen enough voor onbepaalde tijd? As far as I know, that is enough. But that can be checked. Then I see a question, what do you mean for a lawyer working for free? Is that pro bono? Yes, that's pro bono. Then the lady, I have married my husband for 13 years. I have a residence permit for 3 years, about 3 years ago, and my husband moved to Romania. The question is she and her husband still living in the Netherlands and working from time to time in Romania? Or did they move to Romania, build up their life, and are sometimes back in the Netherlands? This is a very difficult case, and I think this lady needs more professional advice than we can give right now, because if you get a permit for the Netherlands and you leave the Netherlands, then it is arguable that you don't need your permit in the Netherlands anymore, and then it can get revoked. Depends on how much time you're staying outside of the Netherlands, but that is a sensitive issue. Then the next question, what position is better? Does a sponsor need to provide monthly bank account balance to prove ability of sponsor? Now, at the application, you must provide all kinds of information, your working contract, arbeidsovereenkomst, specifications and things like that. But that is only at the application. I will keep talking until Mr. Litai says to be quiet. So then what position is better, being a kennis migrant or being having another kind of permit? Well, having a high-skilled migrant permit is nice, also for tax reasons, but in the end, you will have to change your permit to something else. And the tax, the 30% ruling is not forever, but until 2024. So from the time it is 2024, I certainly would try to get another permit. And learning Dutch and having a little bit knowledge of the culture makes life also much easier in the Netherlands. So I would say don't rush, but get yourself the inburgeringsdiploma. Then the question is the lady with who's a victim of domestic violence in 2018. Well, she has already a permit to stay with the children. So the domestic violence was relevant in 2018, but not anymore. I would say that she could continue having the permit to stay with her child, to have contact with her child. And after 5 years of having a residence permit uninterruptedly, she can apply either for the Dutch passport or for a long-term stay within the European Union permit. That is maybe the best option. It is always good to be independent instead of being dependent. Then, what was?
I think that was it, Mr. Kleiweg, or?
Sorry, I cannot hear you very well.
Oh, I thought that was it. So if you can think about the questions, I think I will give a short summary in Bahasa Indonesia.
Okay.
So Mr. Kleiweg menyatakan bahwa beliau janji mungkin waktu sekarang terlalu pendek karena cuma 20-25 menit. Tapi beliau menyatakan semua pertanyaan beliau di email ke beliau dan beliau akan jawab supaya kita semua bisa baca dan bisa pikir kata-kata dari Mr. Kleiweg. Selain itu, Mr. Kleiweg coba menjawab 7 pertanyaan sampai saat ini. Salah satunya pertanyaan mengenai orang Indonesia yang di Belanda yang tidak kerja, lalu partnernya mau stop visa. Biasanya Mr. Kleiweg bilang visanya ditarik, kecuali ada bukti-bukti bahwa kena KDRT. Tapi hari terakhir dari visa, pas visa di revoked atau visanya ditarik, masih ada 2 tahun untuk usahakan visa yang lain. Berarti contoh, besok tanggal 5 Februari visa Anda stop, tetap ada 2 tahun sampai 2023, 6 Februari 2023 untuk dapat visa yang lain. Atau maunya lebih cepat, bisa dibuktikan bahwa kena KDRT. Menurut Mr. Kleiweg ada pertanyaan mengenai skill bahasa NT2. Menurut beliau NT2 itu cukup untuk dapat visa tetap di Belanda. Dan yang ketiga pro bono, iya benar-benar pro bono, beliau tidak dibayar kecuali mungkin dibayar lewat subsidi negara. Pertanyaan dari ibu yang udah menikah 13 tahun dan ada 3 tahun visa di Belanda. Pertanyaannya itu tergantung visanya di Belanda dan sering ke negara lain, Romania di dalam kasus tersebut atau tidak. Dan itu sangat complicated dan mungkin lebih bagus Mr. Kleiweg menjawab lebih detail di pertanyaan yang dijawab lewat email. Mengenai tiap bulan harus tunjuk slip gaji atau uang seberapa di bank, Mr. Kleiweg menyatakan kalau ajukan visa, di dalam aplikasi visa harus tulis pendapatan sponsornya setahun berapa, dan itu bisa bulanan harus sekian atau sebagai perusahaan harus sekian, dan itu udah jelas di situ. Berarti tidak usah tiap bulan lagi tunjuk slip gaji atau rekening. Mengenai pertanyaan mana visa yang lebih bagus, high skilled visa. Beliau bilang high skilled visa itu bagus, tapi juga bagus untuk lebih tahu mengenai Belanda dengan inburgeringskursus, kursus bahasa. Dan 30% ruling atau diskon di pajak itu bagus, tapi itu tidak abadi karena setelah 2024 tidak lagi dapat 30% diskon itu. Dan beliau sarankan untuk mungkin dapat visa lain. Dan juga tadi beliau bilang beliau itu spesialis hukum imigrasi, bukan di cinta atau hati, karena tadi ada pertanyaan mengenai visa kalau kena KDRT mungkin harus cari pasangan lain, tapi beliau tidak mau bilang. Yang penting dapat cowok yang baik hati dan benar usahakan. Mengenai KDRT, itu tadi ada ibu ada visa karena boleh tinggal dengan anak. Beliau bilang itu bagus. Walaupun kena KDRT, bisa juga dapat visa berdasarkan KDRT. Tapi setelah 5 tahun, visanya bisa diganti untuk visa tetap atau bisa dapat warga negara asing, warga negara Belanda dalam hal tersebut. Okay, Mr. Kleiweg, apologize. I've answered shortly your 7 answers. Did you have more or?
Yes, I have some more answers. I saw a lady saying, I'm currently working under the Zhukia visa. By the end of July, my contract will be extended and I'll be granted a work visa. I assume she means that it's a high-skilled migrants permit. I think that is a very attractive option because that is also for tax reasons pleasant. She also has a boyfriend that can be her sponsor. But in this case, I think it is most practical to take the high-skilled migrant permit because most likely she has been studying here for a couple of years. She had the Zoekyear visa and she will have a high-skilled migrant permit for several 100 more years. And after having here stayed for about 5 years, it's a bit different in this case, she will be able to apply for a permit because of long-term stay within the European Union. And that is the most convenient permit you can have. It's the strongest permit. And if I was in that lady's position, I would choose for that. Having a permit with partner is fine, but having an independent permit is more convenient. And then I see, I think I have, then a lady with says, I have a Chavez residence permit. Based on your knowledge and experience, which one is better? Should I change it later on with the partner residence permit? Yes, she should do, because the Chavez permit is not permanent, it is not forever. So if you can get a change from Chavez permit to normal partner permit, then later on you can apply for a permit for indefinite time. That is a more secure and practical situation. If the partner permit becomes a problem, then you can switch back to the Chavez permit, and then you have lost nothing.
Okay, apologies. Chavez permit?
The Chavez filters permit, that's a case at the European Court, and that is if you are the care giver of a Dutch child under 18. And this person has a child, she's taking care of it. She has a status to give care of to the child, but she also now has a boyfriend that can give her a residence permit for a partner, and she can apply for that while she is in the Netherlands taking care of her child. And if she has a permit as a partner, then she will be able, after a while, to get a permit for indefinite time. Of course, then she must do the inburgeringscursus.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kleiweg. Seeing the time, I think it's good to give a short, brief summary in Indonesian. Again, thank you so much for your time and for all your input. I think this will help a lot of our people here in the Netherlands. So hopefully next time we can still make an appeal on you to help us again for certain issues. Mr. Kleiweg menyatakan tadi ada satu ibu menyatakan beliau lagi dapat visa sukyar. Itu Mr. Kleiweg asumsikan bahwa ibu atau bapak tersebut kuliah di Belanda dan dapat ijazah di Belanda, dan karena itu beliau menyatakan bagus sekali kalau dalam visa sukyar dapat visa untuk kerja, dan itu sepertinya visa high skilled migrant. Dan setelah itu bagusnya bisa ada dua opsi, bisa partner visa, tapi juga bisa dapat setelah kerja berapa tahun di sini dapat visa untuk long stay permit, dan itu lebih dari 5 tahun, dan itu yang paling bagus menurut Mr. Kleiweg. Selain itu juga beliau menyatakan tadi ada visa Chavez. Ternyata itu visa Chavez seperti ibu atau bapak yang seperti care atau jaga anak yang masih di bawah umur, dan itu beliau menyatakan visa itu tidak abadi, dan suatu saat kalau bisa diganti seperti ibu atau bapak tersebut ada partner di Belanda sini untuk ganti ke partner visa, itu lebih bagus karena itu lebih tetap. Dan beliau juga menyatakan kalau dengan akibat apapun dari cerai atau putus atau adanya meninggal, bisa ganti visanya lagi ke visa Chavez. Tapi yang lebih nyaman menurut Mr. Kleiweg adalah visa partner dalam kasus tersebut. Oke, itu kesimpulan dari jawaban-jawaban dari Mr. Kleiweg. So thank you again, Mr. Kleiweg. So terima kasih lagi Bapak Kleiweg untuk waktu dan perhatian malam ini. So now I will continue to confer Mr. Groen. So thank you again, Mr. Groen, and sorry that you always have to be patient and waiting for us. So there are 3 questions. I think Mrs. Jasmine already conveyed these questions to you. So hereby the floor for you. So
okay. Well,
thank
you, Mr. Litai. The first question was about a 62-year-old person married with a grandchild. This grandchild or this person wants that the grandchild comes to this country in order to study. To be honest, this is not a family law question. It's, according to my view, it's an immigration law question. If this child has any possibilities to come to this country in order to study. So it would be a question, I believe, for Mr. Kleiweg. The second question is about the pregnant wife in another country who wants to give birth in this country. Yes, of course she can give birth in this country, but only based on the proper documents to enter this country. So this again is also a question to be answered by Mr. Kleiweg. sorry to say it. My question is, why does this woman not already have the proper paperwork? From a family point of view, if your wife, if it's a real valid marriage, we talked about the validity of marriages outside. If this is a proper marriage and she is pregnant, and the husband is married to this woman, and he wants that his wife gives birth in this country, why hasn't the wife already the proper paperwork? Is it because of the income of the husband? I don't know. So it's really a family or an immigration law question which should be answered. The third question is about withdrawing sponsorship. This person wants to go to Indonesia for a holiday, and she's afraid that I believe the husband will withdraw the sponsorship of the lady. Yes, things happen, but I don't believe, but it's also Mr. Kluivert has more view on this or information on this than I do. But I believe that if he writes a letter to the IND and this woman is only for 2 weeks on holiday in Indonesia, that the IND doesn't work that fast that she cannot enter the country. So nevertheless, it's a sign that something is not good in this marriage. And from a family point of view, I would first solve these issues. If it's through mediation, because this is also an option, try to work it out. And if it really doesn't work, then you always can think of a divorce. And then I'm more than willing to help and to claim financial support from the husband to the concerning woman. Yeah, sorry I left, but I like my job, sorry.
No problem, Mr. Groen. It's always good to like your job. I feel a little bit pity. You have to wait so long, and then you have only 3 questions, and which out of 3 is almost for Mr. Kluivert. But I will give a short summary in Indonesian again. So Mr. Groen menyatakan dari 3 pertanyaan yang dikasih Mbak Yasmin ke Mr. Groen, sebenarnya hampir semua pertanyaan itu masalah-masalah imigrasi, dan sepertinya Mr. Kluivert akan jawab pertanyaan-pertanyaan tersebut. Yang Mr. Groen menyatakan bahwa ibunya yang melahirkan ke Belanda, Mr. Groennya tanya, kok masa mau melahirkan di Belanda, kok kenapa surat-surat belum diurus? Itu sebagai sisi dari Mr. Groen sebagai pengacara keluarga. Selain itu, yang pertanyaan 3, yang Mr. Groen menyatakan ibu yang mau libur ke Indonesia tapi takut karena suaminya mau undurkan sponsornya. Beliau menyatakan, saya sebagai pengacara keluarga pasti urus kenapa masalah seperti itu bisa muncul. Dan beliau juga bilang imigrasi Belanda, IND, Imigrasi dan Naturalisasi Dienst, pasti kalau bapak tersebut tulis surat mau mengundurkan bantuan atau sponsorshipnya, IND tidak mungkin dalam 2 minggu udah buat keputusan bahwa ibu tersebut balik ke Belanda. Dan beliau juga menyatakan, saya sebagai pengacara keluarga yang ada hati di bidang tersebut, lebih baik cari solusi lain. Mungkin solusinya lewat mediasi. Mungkin ada pihak ketiga yang menengah, bukan menengah untuk cerai ya, tapi menengah untuk bantu dalam masalah-masalah tersebut. Dan kalau tetap masalah tetap masih ada, Mr. Groen selalu tersedia untuk bantu untuk kalau mau cerai, bantu bahwa hak-hak semua dilindungi dan dibantu sama Mr. Groen. Okay, Mr. Groen, I've give a short summary in Indonesian. So actually, I said I feel a little bit pity that you have only 3 questions, which only 1 is actually for you. So today the big piece of the cake is all for Mr. Kluivert. So Mr. Kluivert, perhaps you can give a small outline or a little bit input concerning the 2 questions. One is about the 2 60-old people, so 64, 66, and the lady wants to bring her grandchild to the Netherlands for a study. And the other one is concerning the lady who's pregnant and want to birth in the Netherlands, but she doesn't have yet the proper papers. So perhaps you can give some answers on this, Mr. Kluivert. Thank you.
My pleasure. About the child from the grandparents that they want them to study in the Netherlands, that is possible, not on the basis of family reunion, but based on the possibility to study in the Netherlands. If the young man or girl is a bit bright and he's studying in Indonesia already, he can become a student in the Netherlands. That will be expensive, I warn for that. and if he will be admitted, then he will be entitled to a residence permit also. That is an option. Normally, you don't have to contact a lawyer for that. You contact the University for Applied Sciences, where he does want to go study, or the normal university, and they will help you with the application. And that is then the option to get him in the Netherlands through study and later on through labor. Then about a pregnant lady in Indonesia. If she wants to come to the Netherlands, either she must follow the procedure for admission to stay with partner or husband and meet the requirements. If the partner or husband does not have sufficient income, that is a problem, unless there is a waiver or a solution possible for that. I cannot judge that based on the information. Another option would be if the lady applies for a holiday visa to the Netherlands and stays here, get maybe a baby, and then go back to Indonesia and apply from there for a residence permit. It's a bit a long way around, and of course, due to COVID, personally, I think it is not a very easy thing to fly and not a healthy thing to fly. About the other questions, I saw something coming in via the chat for Mr. Groen, but I have a suggestion for questions to Mr. Groen, because what I hoped for is that people would say, look, I have a friend in Indonesia, she is left behind by her husband with 1 or 2 children. The husband is having a good time in the Netherlands and he forgot about his wife. How can you help? Well, then Mr. Groen can help in many ways. He can collect alimentatie things for that. Also, sometimes men go to Indonesia, spend holiday there, meet a nice woman, and well, we all know what happens. Man goes home after the holiday, woman finds out that she's pregnant, and the man tries to forget about it. If you know somebody like that, Mr. Groen is the best contact you can have for that, because he will know how to sort it out, how to obtain fatherhood for the child, how to obtain alimentatie. That is what we do together all the time, and that is where he is so good at. So I suggest that if you have friends with such a problem, you ask Mr. Groen. He's the guy to go to. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Kleijer, for your suggestions and also for your answers. I will give a short summary in Indonesian again. So, terima kasih Bapak Kleijer. Bapak Kleijer tadi menyatakan bahwa terkait kasus 5 menit lagi. Tadi Ibu Yuka lagi menyatakan saya juga ada 5 menit, dan Pak Luki dari KBRI juga ada mau kasih kesimpulan. Sebagai singkatan, untuk opa dan oma yang anak cucunya mau kuliah di Belanda itu bisa, tapi harus ikut sesuai ketentuan dari universitas, dan tidak usah melamar di IND, tapi di universitas atau hogeschool atau University of Applied Science tersebut. Dan mungkin juga bisa kontak dengan international office-nya, dan juga dengan duo yang urus mahasiswa-mahasiswa di Belanda. Selain itu, mengenai ibunya mau melahirkan di Belanda, bisa ikut prosedur yang biasa untuk tinggal di Belanda seperti partner visa. Tapi juga kalau partnernya gaji tidak cukup, lumayan susah untuk datang ke Belanda. Tapi Mr. Kleijer bilang bisa terjadi, walaupun sangat sulit karena COVID-19 sekarang dan tidak direkomendasi, karena bisa terjadi tidak jadi, bisa datang dengan visa libur, melahirkan di sini lalu balik lagi di Indonesia. Tapi itu sangat-sangat sulit menurut beliau. Selain itu, beliau juga menyatakan sebagai masukan untuk teman-teman kita yang bisa dibantu sama Mr. Groen, mungkin teman-teman ada keluarga yang pernah berhubungan dengan cewek atau cowok Belanda yang libur di Indonesia, lalu cewek tersebut jadi hamil di Indonesia dan melahirkan, Mr. Groen bisa bantu dengan hal-hal tersebut. Dan itu juga bantuan dari negara Belanda. Yang penting ada hubungan dengan Belanda. Adalah jadi hamil dari orang Belanda, atau mungkin ada dapat hak-hak pensiun karena udah pernah kerja di Belanda, pindah ke Indonesia. Hal-hal seperti begitu, Mr. Groen dan Mr. Klewer sangat bisa bantu teman-teman kita. Dari sisi waktu saya cuma ada 3 menit. Dan saya mau sangat berterima kasih untuk Mr. Groen, Mr. Anton, dan juga teman-teman dari grup pengurus seperti Ibu Yuke, Mbak Yasmin, dan juga Pak Luki dari KBRI, dan juga Pak Dubes. Kami sangat senang dan sangat berterima kasih udah bisa buat acara tersebut. So, Mr. Anton and Mr. Klewer, we want to thank you very much for your time. We probably will contact you again because there's still a lot of related issues. And perhaps after COVID, we can meet each other in real life. So we are most delighted to have you here.
My pleasure.
Demikian, terima kasih teman-teman. Dengan ini saya sebagai moderator mau kasih kesempatan lagi untuk Pak Luki, Attaché Protokol, Kepala Protokol Konsuler untuk tindak lanjut acara tersebut. Terima kasih. Silakan Pak Luki.
Oke, langsung saja biar cepat, waktunya sudah mepet karena saya mesti segera pulang pakai sepeda, perjalanan masih jauh. Terima kasih sudah sangat elaboratif. Kesimpulannya, thank you all for the explanation and respond to the answer, Mr. Groen and Mr. Klewer. Saya tidak akan menyimpulkan karena tadi Bung Ebet sudah sangat elaboratif dalam menyimpulkan. Singkat saja, ada hal yang penting tadi disampaikan oleh Mr. Klewer. Jangan pernah diamkan masalah keimigrasian. Itu tidak akan selesai dengan sendirinya. Bahkan bisa menjadi lebih buruk kalau didiamkan. Mungkin di Indonesia bisa didiamkan ya, ada banyak keluarga. Tapi di Belanda jangan didiamkan karena mereka punya strict rules. Atas nama Pak Dubes dan atas nama KBRI, terima kasih kepada Mbak Yuke, Mbak Imelda, Mbak Yasmin, Kang Ebet, semua juga buat teman-teman. Please pergunakan kesempatan ini karena kita nanti next ketemu lagi webinar itu topiknya akan lain. Kecuali kalau memang animonya tinggi mungkin akan kita ulangi lagi ya Mbak Yuke dan teman-teman, tapi next topik mungkin akan berbeda, jadi setiap ada webinar yang diselenggarakan oleh kita agar dimanfaatkan sebaik-baiknya. Thank you once again, terima kasih semua.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Terima kasih Pak Luki. Mungkin Ibu Yuke sebagai pelenggaranya atau sebagai MC mau tutup acara. Dan tadi maaf saya lupa terima kasih juga untuk Usi atau Mbak Imelda. Maaf, benar-benar saya hari ini pikun banget ini, maaf ya teman-teman.
Ya, oke. Thank you very much for your great attention. Semoga acara ini sangat bermanfaat buat kita semua dan bisa menjawab segala persoalan yang kita hadapin ataupun yang teman-teman kita hadapi, saudara-saudara kita hadapin, kita bisa saling membantu. Dan juga kalau masih ada pertanyaan lain, silakan lewat email dan website yang sudah disampaikan. Dan semoga kita semua berada dalam lindungan Tuhan. Terima kasih, sampai jumpa.
Terima kasih semua.